Welcome to the podcast where passion and purpose collide. We are on a mission to interview women and the occasional token man about how their passion and purpose have collided to create healthy relationships and profitable businesses. I'm Elizabeth Denham of the Franchise Women magazine, and I'm here with Rebecca Monet of Zoracle Profiles. So Rebecca, as usual, we're starting our week off with roses and thorns, and you have a good one. So why don't you give us the first
Oh my
round?
gosh, you and I have actually talked about this thorn. It's driving me nuts. Okay, I don't watch a lot of TV, but there's a series out there now on Amazon Prime called Married at First Sight. And I'm in season 3. And one of the married couples, there's a woman, her name is Ashley. And I just want to wring her neck.
Well, when you start with a title, Married at First Sight, it can only go downhill from there, just saying.
Right, but you made a commitment and you told the experts that you want to get married and you're willing to take this risk and you're going to put 100% in. And Ashley is not doing that. She barely is putting in 1%. There's no emotion on her face. She gives her husband anything but no feedback, no conversation, no affection. And this poor man, his name is David, is working so hard to earn her trust and earn her love and be patient. And I'm going, there's got to be a billion women lined up for this particular man. And she is stone cold. And every part of me goes, how did the experts allow her to get through and even become a contestant here? Because clearly she's not committed, and clearly she's too self-absorbed, and clearly she's got some mental issues, in my opinion.
If they don't have the Zoracle profiling tool.
That's it. They need the Zoracle tool to make a better match. I think that's exactly. But it was so funny, Elizabeth, is I'm triggered.
You have been talking about this for a couple of days, so something is in there somewhere in your psyche.
Something's triggering, like how disrespectful and how unkind, and you're making every woman on the planet look horrible. Grow up or get off the show.
So do they get paid to be on the show? I mean, what could her motivation possibly be?
I really don't know. They must sign some kind of commitment letter because they're forced to stay for the full, whatever it is, six weeks. But you can see she barely utters a word. She is not there.
Does she not like David? I mean, now I'm going to have to watch it.
Yes, you're going to have to watch it. No, she doesn't. She has a particular type visually in her mind of who's the ideal. And her number one goal was to no longer keep going back to the same type because it wasn't working. And he's not physically her type. He's handsome. He's really handsome and he's gorgeous, but not her physical type.
So she wasn't committed to the process. Very interesting. So what's your rose? Did you have a rose to counteract that? Because I'm going to be thinking about that one for a minute.
So my rose, and this kind of goes back with something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, is I'm thinking if that woman could find a husband, then certainly I can, because I am all the opposite of that. So I signed up for online dating.
Awesome. So excited.
So that's my rose. I don't know how it's going to go. I just did it a couple of days ago. But I can tell you if she's worthy of a man fighting for her, then and doing whatever he had to win her love, then I'm certainly worthy.
Absolutely. And as I told my friend Julie once, a man is not going to fall out of the sky and knock on your door. You actually have to put yourself out there. So you've taken the step. I'm so excited. Yay. That's a good rose.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Ashley.
You are welcome from my end. And I'm glad that her lack of, participation spurred you on to have the confidence for greater things, because certainly you would be a catch.
Well, thank you. I want that in writing.
Absolutely.
That in writing.
I'm going to put a banner behind you on the wall.
Okay, so what about you? What's your thorn and rose this week?
My rose and my thorn are the chair that I had put on the other side of my desk. A while ago, I flipped my desk around so that it didn't face the wall, it faces into the room, and I put an office chair right there. And found out recently it was a mistake, because in the last several days, people keep coming and sitting in that chair and talking to me all day long, every little interruption, boys everywhere, just sitting down to have a chat. And I'm thinking, do you see me at the computer working? I mean, is this not a clue? And they'll come in and say, how are you? I'm like, good. What you doing? Working. Pretty clear. Do you need something? Okay, off you go. So I guess the thorn on the other side, or the rose, is that I have kids who want to talk to me, which is great.
Yeah.
They generally are not avoiding me. However, I might have to, be a little bit more particular about when I have the chair open. Maybe I'll put one of those signs in it that says, this chair is closed to remain 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
During quarantine. You're in my bubble. You're my 6 foot bubble.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
So it's the last week before the magazine publishes, and it's always just a very busy, stressful, frantic week getting everything where it needs to be. And this is the one week everybody wants to talk to me. It's like when they're babies and you pick up the phone and that's the only time they want to talk or play, is when you pick up the phone. It's the same exact thing. I've got my computer open. Here they are.
That's right. That's funny. Well, maybe if you're choosing to leave the chair, maybe you get one that's not comfortable. So when they,
that's a good idea. I
I
could trade it out for like a card table chair or something.
Yeah, something very uncomfortable where they just get to the point and they move on.
That's exactly what I need to do. I think we have solved it.
Oh my gosh, how funny.
All right. Well, good ones for the week. I cannot wait. This is going to be so exciting to have a weekly update on your online dating profile.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. But we're at least
excited.
online.
That's first step. Cannot wait. All right. Well, that is the Rose and Thorns segment for the week. We are going to move on to our interview, and we will be back next week with more highs and lows. And we have a very special guest this afternoon. Rebecca, tell us who we have.
We have Meg Roberts. Finally, we captured her. We're able to get her.
Like it's Tiger King.
I know. We're so excited. So Meg Roberts is the CEO and president of the Lash Lounge. She's also, as president, representing Molly Maid during the episode of A&E's Be the Boss reality series, and I love that series as you learn so much about the business as well as the individuals running it. She was honored by Crain's Detroit as winner of prestigious 40 Under 40 Executive Leadership Award. She was also honored by the Franchise Update magazine as a top 24 female executives. And she's a board member of the International Franchise Association, also a board member in 2013, 2014, and 2015 for Franchise Update Consumer Marketing Conference. Meg is a high energy, a creative thinker, and an effective executive leader with a focus on client relationship building and positive change management, specifically around consumer behavior and technology. So Meg is with us, multitasking as she always does. So we're so excited to have you, Meg.
Well, thanks for having me, Rebecca. That was an incredibly generous introduction. And I just want to clarify for our listening audience, at some point, you know, when you realize you have to change your LinkedIn profile or your Facebook profile photo because it's 10 years old, I know I need to change my photo profile, but I think it's almost time that I have to stop saying the winner of 40 Under 40 because that was almost 8 years ago. So I should be going for the 50 Under 50 at this point because I've only got 2 years left to try to win that sucker.
It's kind of like it.
That's so
it's
funny.
kind of like the real estate agents that have their photo on their business cards and they pass it out, and then when you meet them at the house to look at the house, it's a completely different person, and you're wondering what's going on.
Yeah, they're unrecognizable. It's so funny because when I did online dating, that was a huge thing, is having an accurate photo, and I'm like, do not ever set someone up for disappointment.
No.
You
But
got
you
it.
still,
Own
you
it.
won that award, Meg. You won that award. So leave it on there.
I earned it back then, that's
You
for sure.
earned
Well, I'm
it.
just happy to be here with you guys. It's been nice over the last several months to get to know Elizabeth a little bit better and learn more about the franchise woman. And Rebecca, as we were talking before we started the broadcast, to finally quote unquote meet via Zoom, which is the new way you meet people. I'm just pleased to be part of something that is promoting such a critical aspect of franchising, which is women. I mean, we represent 50% of the ownership of franchise locations. We don't represent 50% of leadership. So hopefully we'll make some changes there as well. But I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Very exciting. So let's start right where you went with that, because there's no doubt in leadership, women in franchising are still a minority. And I know that's changing. I've been in franchising 27 years, but from your perspective and from your experience as a woman in a leadership role, how is it different, and what obstacles have you had to overcome?
You know, it's interesting. I was lucky in my career. I've always been lucky in my career. I feel like there's a little bit of, you know, you're only lucky if you're good saying. So hopefully it's a little bit of both. But my first job out of graduate school was at one of the largest ad agencies in Chicago. And at that time, in the middle 90s, the CEO was a woman named Tracys Story. She actually is still the CEO, just an incredibly dynamite woman. And, you know, I was young, and in my first job, I didn't realize at first how special that was.
Mm-hmm.
I knew how special she was, but it didn't occur to me that this was unusual for a woman to have such a powerful spot in, you know, one of the largest agencies in the city of Chicago. Since that time, every one of my managers, whether it was a CEO or COO, et cetera, has been a man every single time for the last, you know, 20 some years, which has been great. I've learned a ton, and I've been lucky enough to work with some incredible leaders, all of whom happen to be men. But it does really crystallize for you how limited our presence is, right? You kind of look around, and currently I'm with a great company, not currently, I am with a great company, Franworth, and our executive leadership team is all men, except for me. And I don't think it's for lack of want or awareness that we need to expand more. I think in some ways we have to be very deliberate in our selection of people and say, gosh, you know, what do our brands represent? Who are our clientele? In our industry, the Lash Lounge and many of our beauty brands, 90% of our clientele are women. So should we not also be seeking to have more female leadership at higher levels within the corporation? So, you know, to really answer your question most directly, I think it is the responsibility of all people in the workplace to seek out a reflective pattern of what your community represents, what your brand represents. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be hiring always the right person for the job. It just means that we should be certain that we're looking and assessing constantly as our company continues to grow. And you know, personally, I've built teams largely of women, perhaps because I've been in the marketing space, and that tends to be a space that's dominated more by women. And that's given me an opportunity to help them find their opportunities and to contribute in a small way to some pretty incredible careers. But my number one partner is a guy I've worked with for 10 years, and it's a man. So, you know, you just, we evolve, right? But that's the whole point. We should be constantly evolving.
Well, and I think that when you are intentional, like you were talking about, being intentional and being reflective of your consumer base or your franchisees or whoever it is that you're representing, it's really not that hard. You know, we have a whole magazine geared toward women. It is not hard to find powerful, successful, amazing women to cover. It is not hard to find diverse groups of women. But you do have to be aware that you're doing it, don't you think? And how do you teach particularly the men who are in more powerful positions in numbers? How do you communicate that to them so that they are a little bit more intentional in the awareness of it, do you think?
Hopefully you guys can hear me. You do have to be aware. And I think that means, you know, not limiting your job search know, and, you know, a lot of the time that's people within our own social group or gender groups. And I just think it requires a level of consciousness, you know, regularly assessing why you're making a decision, and not just what the job requires, but for whom the outcome of the job is designed. And that's the customer at the end of that. You know, whether it's an operations person who's going to be engaging with your franchisees, and if 90% of your franchisees are women, you might want to give consideration to how that connection is going to happen more naturally. Not to say it would necessarily be with another woman, but just thoughtfully consider that.
So I wonder if I could shift topics just a little bit, because you're known in the franchise space of shaking things up, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Right? And it was fascinating to learn a little bit more about you, especially around this change management thing. But I think it's for you even more than change management. You are a change catalyst. You actually cause people to think differently, act differently, approach things differently. First off, do you agree that do you see yourself as a change catalyst, not just a change manager?
You know, I'd like to think of myself as a change catalyst. The reason being that most assignments, most jobs that I have taken haven't had a clear change assignment. And when I got there and did my quick assessment, it was obvious that a lot of change was needed. And in most cases, more change than I certainly expected or could even manage on my own. So I would say most certainly a change catalyst, but a change collaborator. That might sound kind of
cool. I like that.
I think that change, you know, I could come in and assess everything and say, gosh, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. And then you become a little bit of a dictator. There's no doubt that people know that I have very strong opinions, and some people find that abrasive, but I think it's just ambition. You know, I want to get to success as quickly as possible for the sake of every franchisee who's ever given us $1, period. That's why I'm impatient. It's not for my own success. It's that a franchisee signed on a dotted line 6 months ago, 6 days ago, 6 years ago. They deserve to be successful, and we can't stop until they are. So the change collaboration piece, though, is important because maybe you're the one who knows what needs to happen, okay? I know sometimes we don't want to say, oh, what was your idea? Or no, but let's just face it. If you're good at your job, you know what needs to be done. If you're really good at your job, you know it's equally as important to let other people come up with those ideas and take ownership and feel authorship and want to collaborate with that change, because it makes it that much easier. So I've had excellent people that I've worked with over the years, and people who understand my style and whose styles are similar and dissimilar, but we will align around a rally idea, around a theme for a year. For COVID with our brand, we branded what we're doing during COVID. We're like, you know what? This is no small thing. We need to give this whole period of time a brand. So we named this entire period Roar. Like, we are roaring, we are reopening and rising, but the roar is this passion, this tenacity, this aggressiveness that is important in this time period. We all get on board and we get behind something big time. And so when you can do that, that makes change pretty easy. So I think the collaboration piece is maybe how I'd like to be known.
Yeah, the change catalyst combined with a collaborative environment that allows that change to be, we're all invested in it, and we want to contribute to it, we're buying into it, and therefore doing it. I love this idea.
It's to you, it's happening because of you, which makes it.
Yeah, I love this idea of a theme, right? If it's a quarter theme or a year theme around this roar, so everybody's on the page with this particular theme that we're working on. So if you have ideas about it, or you know, you can then jump on board and provide those particular ideas. How do you come up with the themes? Is that also a collaborative effort?
No, it's funny that I'd love to say I collaborated, but as I said before, it's one of those things where when you're good at something, just own that you're good at something. And one of my best friends, John Cohen, who's a partner of mine in everything that I do, I'm always saying, I'm just really not good at anything, John. He's good at everything. He is literally good at everything. But he'll remind me, no, you have a certain unique skill set, Meg, that other people don't have. Now, it's not as valuable as some of his skill sets, but one of those things is that kind of stuff just comes to me. I just have a vision. I just say a word and then I'm like, okay, what if it kind of looks like this? And then I can hand it off to all these great, smart people who make it one level better and the next level better and the next level better. I think because I come from an advertising background, because I was in marketing. I mean, I used to make up jingles in the shower when I was a kid. So I love all things that get you hooked. I mean, there was a Ryder truck when I was a kid. Do you all remember Ryder trucks like U-Haul?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
The song was, Ryder trucks are bigger, they're tougher, they're strong, driving a bargain, sure didn't pay. Next time you'll think this way, it's Ryder or it's wrong. And that was probably from 1979. And I never forgot it. Because I think when you market something right, people don't forget about it. And that isn't just a product, it's a process. It's a way of thinking. It's a theme for the year. So there is nothing that I do that doesn't have a theme behind it. So maybe I'm a one-trick pony, but every trick is a little bit different. I think I just...
This is brilliant.
I think I just have a little bit of creativity. I've got that. So yesterday I was on a call with the board, a group of folks from IFA working on a conference, and we're talking about all the different amazing things that we're going to be teaching people. And I'm like, it has to have, it needs an umbrella. It needs something. And out of nowhere, I had this silly idea, but I had skipped the first meeting. So I chatted it to a friend and I said, say this, try this one on, because I don't want credit for this and I don't want to chime in because I was absent. So go for it. And he did. And they were like, oh yeah, this totally works. Let's do that. So yeah, I don't need the credit. I just want the outcome. I just want people to learn correctly and retain it.
Well, and that's the thing. I think I do the same thing. I woke up the other morning and I had like writing an article, the start is the hardest thing in the world. But once I start, I'm off. And I wrote a lead in my sleep and I woke up and I typed it as fast as I could because I'm like, that's how I want to start this article. But I think, and don't you think, does your creativity feed off of the creativity of others? Because so many times I find that when you have that collaborative effort, not only is it motivating for you, but it's motivating for the people around you when you can have that mutual creative spark. Do you think where does that come from for you?
It's just like the change collaboration, right? I mean, just yesterday in this idea of the emerging franchise conference, we came up with this idea of franchise fitness, and it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. So what is franchise fitness about? For an emerging franchisor, that's probably several things, right? And I was hooked on this idea of the heart, the heart of fitness is heart health, and that's where your culture comes from. And someone else chimed in, well, what about endurance? Well, endurance isn't a word that comes to mind. It didn't pop into my head when I started thinking about fitness. And he said it, I'm like, yes, endurance. Like, where do we use endurance? Is that operations? Is endurance the hook for, financial endurance? But it's that exact kind of thing. I could have spent 10 days and I wouldn't have come up with that word, but he did. So it's cool when you get to do it together, and nobody does their best work alone. Nobody.
Right. No. Yeah, I agree. Well, and in terms of motivating people, you talked about being impatient because you want success for everybody. And one of the things that you've mentioned before is aggressive goal setting. And so I want to know exactly how you define aggressive goal setting and what that looks like in practice.
Gosh, I'm really aggressive about success, but I'm not, I guess I wouldn't say I'm aggressive about empirical goals, right? I'm not the kind of person that a PE company would necessarily love, because I just tell the truth. This is what is possible. I've been doing this for a very long time. We'll get everything we can out of this brand and out of these franchisees for their benefit and ours if we do A, B, and C. but I'm not going to tell you it's going to be 28% growth just because you want to hear it. Like that, I don't play that game.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve anybody. It certainly doesn't serve the most important client, and that's our franchisee. They don't need to think that all we're worried about is, a growth trajectory that's impossible. But where I'm incredibly aggressive in planning is about limits and accountability. And limits sounds like almost oxymoronic when you say aggressive, but what I mean by limits is really holding yourself to the core priorities that have to happen. There's 28 great things we can do this year. We can't afford to do all 28. We don't have the bandwidth for all 28. Which of those 28 is going to drive the best return on investment for our franchisees in the most meaningful way? And so we have to limit our focus to the most critical things and then have absolute accountability to those things and to the things we didn't do, which is almost equally important, right? If you say to your constituents on day 1 of the year, or hopefully, day 300 of the previous year, you're setting the stage for what's to come. Listen, here are the 4 things we're going to focus on. We've shared it with your FAC. We believe in these 4 for these reasons. This is what we're doing. These are the 4 people doing it, and these are the things we are not going to do. I always vocalize the things we are not going to do so someone doesn't feel like they weren't heard when they said, how come we don't sell ice cream cones at the Lash Lounge? I heard you. Great idea. Not for right now. So we say what we're not going to do. We say it out loud. We say the quiet thing out loud so that people hear it, they're digesting it, and we are holding ourselves accountable. Don't go down that slippery slope where suddenly we find ourselves doing 3 little pilot tests that we never planned. So for me, aggressive goal setting is really about limiting the number of goals and maintaining total accountability for delivering against those.
Wow. And that works in every area of our life, in business in particular. If I wanted to lose weight or become physically fit, whether that's fit in business or fit personally, I have to look at what are the priorities. Where am I going to get the biggest bang for the buck and the energy you're putting out? So that's, those 4 things in this case are the most important. There are other things that can be done, but let's focus on mastering and getting good on those 4 things. But that comes back again to this change catalyst collaborator that you have. How do you build that kind of consensus? Is the collaborative effort alone what creates that consensus? Because you need to get everybody on that roar. You need to get everybody on these 4 priorities. How do you build that consensus?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that is not always easily accomplished, nor is it always necessary, right? I mean, if my ingoing proposition is I have to get everybody to agree, I've already lost, because it's never going to happen.
Good luck, right?
You're going to have wildly intelligent people who don't agree, and you're going to have people who aren't so intelligent who don't agree. And you just can't, you can't spend all of your time there. But I think, the concept of gaining traction with people, from my experience in franchising, the most important thing is hearing your franchisees, actually actively listening. People will say, oh, I went on a listening tour and, I called all 20 of my franchisees. So that's great that you listened. Did you hear them? Did you hear them? Because there's a difference. There's a difference. And I think listening and hearing and then responding that you've heard, that you appreciate where they're coming from, and that you may or may not be able to address or make that change. Telling people the truth. This is not rocket science, so I feel so just, pedestrian even saying it. But sometimes the obvious is lost on us in business and in life and communication. Tell people the truth.
Right.
Tell them the truth. We can't afford to do that right now. Or, no, I'm not going to make this exception for you. If you are honest and transparent, people will trust you. If they trust you, they are willing to consider that what you're saying more than likely is in their best interest, because you aren't bamboozling them. You've earned their trust before. So for us, at the beginning of the Lash Lounge experience 2 years ago, and I say us, I mean every member of the Lash Lounge team, It was a one by one, each member of the team earning trust with each member of our franchise community, whether it was the franchise owner or a stylist, you know, or a manager. It was one by one, proving to them that we are all aligned. We are going to keep our word. And I think that's why the limit piece is so important. Our nature when we start something new is to tell everybody what they want to hear, like in a brand new relationship. Oh, you know, you want to share all the good things, and you want people to hear all the good stuff, which in franchising for a franchisee often means telling them yes to everything, but that's not the right answer. It's the wrong answer, actually. So I think the idea that we want to please people, the way to please them, the way I think is pleasing to collaborate and to work with one another is to be really honest and upfront. And then you can make those strides, those changes, those accomplishments. They come as a collective whole as opposed to something that's pushed at you.
Brilliant.
Well, and when you and I talked, you have an interview in the Franchise Woman magazine, this issue coming out next week. And one of the things we talked about is adaptability in terms of communication and in the ways that you communicate with people. And I'm big on the same concept. You communicate in ways you believe people can receive it. And that changes depending on your audience. So tell us how you implement that in your daily business life, because I think it's a really important thing for people to be aware of.
You know, it's funny because there's so many interviews and conversations that you'll have about work-life balance and how do you separate things. And you know, work and life are so intertwined, and they're so much more intertwined than ever before because I'm working and I'm sitting in front of a bunch of chicken and I'm trying to push my cat off the counter. And it's just, I revel in the idea of human connections in all these different ways. For me, one of the greatest things about the franchising industry, probably the greatest thing about the franchising industry, is that I know more people than I could have ever imagined knowing had I stayed in the advertising industry, right? There you're meeting with a handful of clients. I never met the end user, the end drinker, the end pill taker of whatever brand.
Yeah.
Sounds like a bad combination, right?
Yeah. Could be.
It's what I did. It was a feel-good business in the 90s. But I love having all of these connections. And so for me, communication is so easy when it's most natural. Like I don't find Zoom challenging. I'd rather Zoom than talk. Sometimes I want to talk if I'm walking. So my walk time now, usually I'm talking to a franchisee. I called a friend of mine, a franchisee, on Friday night. I was going out for a walk and she said, "What's wrong? Why are you calling?" I'm like, "I was just
checking in.
Yeah, it's Friday. I just wanted to see how you're doing. And I thought you and your husband were taking a vacation soon." You know, I think having time with my kids, having the elements of success that I've been lucky enough to have has provided me a lot of space to be able to take care of my kids and enjoy them. And at the same time, it's provided me a lot of space and a lot of gratitude to make sure that I create space for the people who built mine. So there is no line, really. Every franchisee has my cell phone, every one of them. And a lot of them use it. And they text me, and it might be about Dateline. I mean, one of my franchisees, all we do is text about Dateline because we're obsessed with murder shows. What's great about that is that it's sincere. I adore her. And for that reason, we are friends, and we will be more successful in business because of it. When you start your own business, the two of you, you're doing it as friends, right? You're friends.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to enjoy it. Good people stick together and work well together. And I want our franchisees to largely be our friends. We'll be successful that way. So for me, communication is really, it's core. It's central to who I am, and openness and an availability. There is no formality with me. I mean, there's no formality to the point that, yeah, I'll cuss sometimes. And, you know, sometimes I might send you a funny emoji. That's me. And I think while some people might not always agree with some of the curse words I use, which I understand and fully and I try not to do it, they know that there is an authenticity just in the me that you see right now is not fixed up, is not trying to look any particular part. This is the real me, and I'll get the job done for you.
You know, this attitude is beautiful. I always say the purpose of communication is to build stronger intimacy, understanding, compassion. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're going about, from the sounds of it, this communication is about understanding this person better, building a friendship, relating, and that requires you to be raw and to be honest, and to truly care about, like you said, hearing what this other person is saying. So I think just those few little pieces of, being authentic, communicating in the raw, and truly wanting to understand another person goes a long way to building a friendship and a long-term relationship with, whether it's with an employee, someone at the gym, or in this case, even with a franchisee. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be understood. And everybody wants to know that it's safe to be in a relationship with you, whether you're my boss, you're my franchisor, or you're my friend. I want to know that I'm safe, that you're going to be honest and trustworthy, etc. And that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the openness of that kind of communication requires a certain level of trust, and a real respect for the fact that there might not be a privacy line, but yet it's so private to have individual relationships with people. I so admire physicians and I so admire teachers. I mean, these are two professions who devote their lives to other people, children and patients and so forth. And they have to listen to each and every patient, and each and every student is totally different. They're totally different. And in franchising, because our business is about a model that says you do A, B, C, D, E, and F, and if you do those things, you're going to be successful. I think that we can be predisposed to forget that, okay, doing A, B, C, D, E, and F is actually applied differently to every single one of those franchisees because they are unique individuals. And so you might have a process, you might have a playbook, you might have a checklist, but the way that franchisee learns and processes or even decides to tackle that may be totally different than the next person. Maybe their kid just came home from college because they didn't want to be there and they're dealing with all kinds of stress around that and they didn't get to the checklist. Well, let's listen and hear and empathize and then move on to that thing when the time is right. So I think there's in no way, shape, or form am I suggesting that what we do is as critically important as the great work of teachers and physicians. But I think mentally, if you recognize that your end user, your client deserves to be treated as an individual that you want to get to know as an individual, you're going to get so much further. You're going to get so much further faster and a lot more fun doing it.
Yeah.
Well, and Rebecca and I talked about that. We're actually adding the fun element to our mission statement on our new platform for women because we started valuing, we the value of fun, but you don't always put that in your business plan. And I think that is incredibly important. But also I wanted to touch back on the talk that you had about being real and showing yourself transparently to your franchisees and coworkers and things. And I think one of the things that strikes me is the vulnerability that you allow. And we talked about this for the magazine in terms of not always being the perfect person or leader or coworker or friend or whatever. To me, when I have let that, when you let that guard down as a writer, my guard's almost nil. People are drawn to that. And then I think they're willing to work harder on being in relationship with you in whatever form that takes. Don't you think? I think that's an important thing of what you spoke about for our interview.
I think, thank you for bringing that up. I think that, I learned through a whole slew of my own imperfections, wildly imperfect, that imperfection actually creates permission.
Yes.
Sharing your imperfections gives permission to other people to own their own perfections. You have to have some courage to do it. And my first 30 years, I did not have that courage as a result of a difficult divorce and a lot of expensive therapy. You learn, I'm saying it sort of in jest, but truly you learn to appreciate your role and your contribution in something that didn't go right. And when you learn that, you can apply that to every aspect of your life. And I never wish anything painful on others, but I do think trying to own an exterior of perfection is an impossible task. And you're so much more approachable and real if you just admit that you're not
not perfect.
It erases any sense of intimidation or implausibility of achievement. Like if someone's looking up to me, I want them to know that, I barely got into the University of Michigan. Am I a proud alumni? Absolutely. I barely got in.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't show up on my resume, and I don't think it shows up in my accomplishments. But you know what I did when I got there? I sat with every smart person in every class because I knew I barely got in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to make the most of it. So you don't want people to think, oh, well, she did this and she did that. No, I like scraped and clawed to be able to do that and begged for the job and all those kinds of things. So it makes it feel more achievable for people. And that's important because you're motivated if you think something's within reach.
Absolutely. That's perfect.
So it's interesting. As a behavioral scientist, I'm fascinated with human behavior. And the thing that you just brought up about imperfection, I'm a believer that we are fine-tuned and refined in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're hiding our imperfections and our fears and our insecurities, it's hard to evolve. It's hard to get to a higher level. So relationship is what knocks off the chip off our shoulder and fine-tunes it. And it requires us to be okay with not being perfect yet, right? So I hate to do this because I know we could talk for 100 years here. A fascinating conversation that took twists and turns that I'm thrilled about, but we do need to kind of wrap up. So Meg, let people know how they might get in touch with you if they want to learn more about Lash Lounge, how they might be able to do that.
Well, I mean, I consider myself a good mentor and a good friend and a good coach in the industry. If people are interested in franchising in general and just want to, poke around with someone who's been there, done that, I am willing and able to talk to anybody. And if people are specifically interested in the Lash Lounge, same thing. You can just reach me at Meg, M-E-G, at Franworth, F-R-A-N-W-O-R-T-H, Franworth.com. Simple as that. So love to chat with anybody and hopefully find some great people who might be interested in joining this group as we talk more about the future of women in franchising.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. We know you're busy. You can get back to cutting up your chicken.
I wish you could join me for my first attempt at Indian butter chicken tonight, but since it's the first attempt, you probably want to pass. So maybe next time.
We'll wait for the second round. Yeah.
There you go. Thanks. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Meg.
Thanks, Meg.
Welcome back to Women in the Know, where we discuss everything from politics and policy to relationships and marketing. We discuss franchise growth. We discuss difficulties between franchisees and franchisors, and anything to do with life in general. How are you, Rebecca?
I'm fabulous. I tell you what, we just came off of that conversation with Meg Roberts.
Yes.
And I am so jazzed about that conversation that I don't know what to do with this energy.
Well, let's talk more about that, because coming off of that, we had several points that both of us got pretty excited about. She had a great interview. And what was the biggest takeaway that you had from her interview?
As you pointed out, there were so many that we're just taking notes, copious notes. But I think the thing that was kind of hit a home run for me was this idea of theming, that, she sets a yearly theme for her company, Lash Lounge, and for her franchisees. And then within that theme, she has sort of, this is how we're going to get there. So her theme right now is this idea of roar. And she talked about a couple of other themes in other organizations that she is with. And there was something about that said, if I knew what that theme was, if it is, let's say the theme is to be a giver or whatever it is, now I know how to accomplish that. And her point that she made was, when the theme is in place and the 4 particular things that will allow us to get to that theme, it creates this incredible buy-in from corporate and as well as from the franchisees, and the collaboration begins to happen and the ideas start to happen once we kind of know this is where we're going. This is our theme for the next period of time. And for her, it's a year period of time. But I got so excited about that because Imagine that. If our theme this year is, I'm going to be healthy, then you know where your focus and your time, money, and energy is going to go, and others can come around whatever that particular goal was. But that was my like boom, boom, boom kind of thing that she said.
I loved it. And did you catch the acronym, what it stood for?
No, I missed it.
Reopening and Rising. ROAR.
Roar. I love it.
And it comes together. And so it's a, to me, I like a theme that is multi-leveled. You know, it's a roar, which is an action, but it's reopening and rising, which is a different action, and it's an attitude. And I love to come up with those sorts of things. I've turned 49 in April, so I'm doing in my mind, my countdown to 50, and what do I want to have achieved this last year in my 40s. And I was watching or listened to a podcast with Goldie Hawn's daughter, Kate Hudson. And she called her, the interviewer, I think it was Oprah, said, "Is your mom really as happy and joyful as she seems?" And Kate Hudson said, "She is a tornado of joy." And for some reason, that phrase, like this past couple of years, we've had a lot of personal ups and downs. And I thought, I want to be a tornado of joy. That is going to be the theme of my year. Like anytime I get down and out, I have an Instagram called the Tornado of Joy, just to make myself focus more in that direction, because I haven't been as good at it lately. So I think those things really do. It's a mantra in your mind.
It is.
Every time they did this during COVID, they branded themselves to roar during COVID, which is reopening and rising. And so when you get down and out because it's hard or it's tiring or it's getting old, which it is for all of us, I think edginess has picked up, you know, in my immediate circle. And every time all they have to do is think roar, you know, and focus on a different word. I'm going to reopen, I'm going to rise, I'm going to, you know, roar my way through this. How rallying is that? You know?
Yeah. And because it's very clear, like you said, the roar is an acronym. Now we know where we're allotting our time, our money and energy, and the ideas and the systems and the process, whatever is directed to roaring. And in your case, into, you know, becoming a tornado of joy. You can look at everything in your life and say, does this make me a tornado of joy?
Aggressively joyful.
Aggressively joyful. Tornado of joy kind of thing. So I'm going to adopt this mantra. My best friend and I actually tried to find a single word that we wished described us, right? And she had her word. And every time I use it for her, I can see her physiology change and her thought process change. And for me, the word, as you know, is bodacious.
Bodacious, yes.
Bodacious. And if my goal, my theme for my life is to be bodacious, I'm going to act differently than I want to make a lot of money, right? So that's a different kind of theme. So I just really so enjoyed what Meg shared. And I hope, I'm coming away with a reminder to do this in my own life and my own business life. And hopefully everybody that goes back and listens to Meg come out with similar kind of goals that you and I now have.
Absolutely. And you do tend to forget, especially like I'm the only one who wants to be a tornado of joy. And so sometimes I forget that I need to be doing that. And my son made me a graphic that's like this colorful, like joyful looking tornado. It's kind of funny. So it is nice to have someone like Meg remind you to get back, because it comes down to a core value, really.
It does.
Who are you? What do you want to be individually, as a company, as a leader? So I thought she was one of my faves so far.
Me too. I just had such a great time. Okay, so I'm going to hold you as my business partner to your theme of becoming a tornado of joy. And I'm going to ask you to hold me to my theme of becoming bodacious.
Absolutely. It's a deal.
It's a deal. All right.
So check back in at the end of the year, right?
Or I'm going to check in every week with you, girl.
Well, that's even better.
Are you being joyful? So we do have to wrap up this session of Women in the Know. Hopefully you walked away with some powerful things if you were listening in. I know Elizabeth and I did. Welcome to Ask Beck and Liz, where no topic is off limit. We want to answer your questions about business, life, and everything in between. If you have a question for Liz and me, send it to ask@beckandliz.com. That's ask@beckandliz.com. So, Elizabeth, coming off of the conversation with Meg Roberts, she hit so many wonderful points, one of which had to do with being transferable to be herself in all situations with her franchisees, with her employees, etc. I thought it was such a valuable point. So I guess the question I have is, what is your thoughts about that? And how do you find ways to be transparent?
Well, I think, when she talked about that and not feeding somebody a line about what they want to hear, especially when you're trying to attract a franchisee to your system, I think most of us probably relate to that. I was thinking about all the people that you deal with in your life. And I had a pediatrician one time tell me that he didn't know something. And I was thrilled because they can't know everything about everything. And for him to stop and say, you know what, I'm going to go look something up and just make sure and I'll be right back. I trusted him 1,000 times more after that than because when they're making stuff up, when they're not exactly sure. And I think that level of transparency puts so much trust in you from not only the people that you're leading within your business, but the people you want to attract to your business, the people you're collaborating on committees with or in lobbying efforts or whatever it is, because I know Meg does some lobbying. And if she's carrying that as something that she wants to present and be, people have to trust her.
Yeah. And trust is so important no matter what the relationship is, whether it's a husband and wife, whether it's a best friend, whether it's a business partner, franchisor, franchisee. I thought the point around being okay with being imperfect was so important, because I think especially with social media and some of the things that are going on, many people are puffing themselves up and don't always present the good, bad, and the ugly of themselves. So this confidence in I'm imperfect, it's okay to be imperfect. This person I'm in relationship with is likely also imperfect. And therefore it's okay for me to speak the truth, be honest, be transparent, and show the good, bad, and the ugly. And that to me takes a bit of self-confidence to say, I don't have to have it all together yet. And to your point, it then builds a greater level for trust. Never mind, it then gives us an opportunity to have someone speak into our lives and help us perfect ourselves or get a little bit better at something.
Well, and when you have that kind of personality and reputation, and that's the way that people know you, showing that vulnerability makes you accessible. And she said to me when I interviewed her for the magazine, I would never want anybody to think I have it all together. And, the way she talks and the confidence that she exudes, she has a lot together. But even the most together seeming people have bad days or have issues or have things they wish they did better. And I remember when I was in college and, in the moment of things, you're pretty heartbroken. I was at FSU and you had to apply to get into the creative writing program. So I applied to 2 different professors. And I have the letters somewhere in a scrapbook saved side by side. One professor wrote me back and said, ugh, you're sentimental. I think I've told you this before. You're sentimental. You're terrible. You need to find a new career. And the other professor was like, love it. Great. Sign up today. And so I was like, the first letter was crushing because that's what I wanted to do. And the second letter, it made me realize that it was me who had to believe in myself and not let the tides turning of others' opinions, crash my wave.
Exactly, which is that ability to self-assess. And as you pointed out, at the same time say, well, maybe I have something still to learn, right? Or something that I'm not quite great at yet. And the way Meg talked about it with this level of humility. Like you said, she's
Mhm.
had great success, but she has this level of humility that has really served her. And I think it's something we really want to walk away with. And this humility allows her to be transparent and honest, which then has people come into her life that want to collaborate, that want to contribute, that want to offer something. And in turn, she brings her gifts and talents. When she's talking about her best friend, you know, she was like, oh my gosh, she's good at everything.
Mhm.
And he's saying, oh my gosh, you're good at this. You know, this ability to see in one another what we don't have and bring it out. But if we can't be honest and raw and authentic, including our weaknesses, others can't, you know, point out our goodness or point out our gifting or come to our rescue if necessary, if we got it all together.
Yeah,
Right?
well, exactly. And when she talked about, getting into the University of Michigan by the skin of her teeth,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you know her now, is surprising because she's so driven and so smart and so well spoken. But my favorite thing that she said of the whole interview, I think, is, because I wrote it down: you are motivated if you believe that something is within reach.
Mm-hmm.
And when she tells people that, who might be struggling or might not think they could reach the same level of success, that allows them to believe, well, if Meg struggled through this particular phase of life, or if she had a hard time getting into school, then maybe I can do that too. Um, and I think that's an important story. And I think that's why you and I tell a lot of the stories that we tell,
Yeah.
because things do seem more attainable when people are human in doing these things.
They're
They're
like us, right?
superhuman. They're just, everybody's a normal person. Some people just have qualities that can be learned: drive, grit, determination, tenacity, all of those
Mm-hmm.
things. And I think that helps everybody think the next step is something they can have as well.
Absolutely, especially if they see themselves in that other person. Our
Mhm.
trainer, Tracy, is a wonderful public speaker and a wonderful trainer. And she tells a story where she watched somebody else up being paid a lot of money to be a speaker that, as she observed them, was quite average, right?
Mm.
But others were very excited about what he was talking about. And she said that was the moment that she realized she too could do that,
Mhm.
right? That when she saw that she was like him, what looked like just an average person with a talent that was, you know, not yet fully developed, it gave her the confidence to say, I can do that
Mhm.
also. And she's
And
gone
I'm worth
on.
being paid.
I'm worth being paid for that.
Not only that, if he's getting that kind of money, so could I.
Yeah. So she went about, you know, taking Toastmaster classes and doing all kinds of stuff and, you know, growing in leaps and bounds. And honestly, I saw the same speaker she's talking about, and sure enough, I would put her neck and neck with him. So it's to Meg's point, when we see something is attainable,
Mhm.
we become a whole lot more motivated to do what it takes to get there.
Absolutely.
So, as always, Miss Elizabeth, we solve the world's problems in 10 minutes flat. We're so good at this.
I know.
So, I want to thank everyone for joining Liz and I today, where passion and purpose collide, and profits are made, and relationships are forged. This is Beck and Liz signing off and wishing you another purpose filled and profitable week.